Crystal Everdeen, and today I'm going to show you how to crochet this mandala purse. Now I recently made another tutorial on how to crochet a mandala purse, but it was all one solid color, and the difference between that one and this one is that I added a second color. But I also did change up a few other minor things that make a big difference in the end. So if you're interested in how I made this purse and would like to make one for yourself, then just keep watching. Now let's get started with the tutorial. For this project, I'm using a whole mess of scrap yarn. So I have no idea what kind of yarn this is or how much yarn I use, so sorry about that. But I do know what size hook I'm using. I'm using a size 5mm hook, and I do always get size 4 yarn, so I'm pretty confident that all this yarn is size 4, as well as 100% acrylic, because apparently that's what I like. I don't like purchase 100% acrylic on purpose. I go to the store and look at the colors and then feel the yarn, and then that's how I buy my yarn. But anyway, the first thing you're going to do is create a slip knot, and then from that slip knot you are going to chain 4 and then go into the very first chain that you made with a slip stitch, and then from there you're going to find the center of the circle you just made and then create 10 double crochets within that circle, as you can see right here. And yes, I am going to go a bit fast with creating this mandala in this video because this is going to be the 3rd time that I make it. I do have a beginner-friendly version of almost the exact same pattern I'm using today. I do tweak it a little bit, and that's why I'm going to show you what I'm doing as opposed to just directing you to the beginner-friendly tutorial. But anyway, if you want a much slower version of almost the exact same thing, then go ahead and check that tutorial out. So I have completed my very first row, and that is again made up of 10 double crochets, and then once I reach the end of it, once I've made my 10th double crochet in that row, I'm going to slip stitch into the very first double crochet I made in that row, and that's how I'm going to complete every single row, by slip stitching into the very first stitch I made for the row. And now for my second row, I'm going to change colors. So I'm going to grab my white yarn and then attach it so that it's on my hook, and now I could crochet with it. And once it's attached, I'm going to create my second row, which is comprised of extended double crochets, but there's going to be 2 extended double crochets inside of every stitch. And if you are not familiar with what an extended double crochet is, it is a yarn over through the stitch, yarn over back through the stitch, yarn over through 2 loops, and yarn over through the last 2 loops. So I have completed my second row, again comprised of 2 extended double crochets inside of every stitch. And now that my second row is complete, I'm going to switch again to the tan yarn, and I'm simply going to put the tan yarn around my hook and then chain with it, making sure that the white is not all loose and making my project look weird. So once that's nice and attached, I'm going to continue on with row number 3, and row number 3 is also comprised of extended double crochets, but only 1 extended double crochet per stitch with a chain in between. So extended double crochet, chain, extended double crochet, and then chain, and then extended double crochet, and so on and so forth until you reach the very end and you've completed your last extended double crochet. And then once you've completed your last extended double crochet of the row, then you're going to finish off the row as you normally would by simply slip stitching into the very first stitch that you made in the row. So here I am. I'm going to slip stitch into that very first stitch I made for the row and complete row number 3. So after that, I'm going to switch back to my white yarn by again simply placing the yarn over my hook and chaining with it, making sure that the other color, in this case the tan color, is nice and tight, so I give the string a pull. And once that's nice and attached, then I'm going to start on row number 4, And for row number 4, it's going to comprise of, again, extended double crochets because it's arguably my favorite stitch. And this is going to comprise of 2 extended double crochets within every opening. So within the openings between the extended double crochets of the previous rows, then you're going to make 2 extended double crochets within those openings. And it's going to look awesome. And because this row looks so awesome, I decided to do it again, which does deviate from the beginner-friendly mandala pattern. And the reason for me changing it was simply because I thought it looked cool. There's not really any other reason. But if you just want to keep to the beginner-friendly version and not follow the super fast mandala tutorial that I'm doing right now, then that's perfectly fine. But if you're able to keep up, then awesome. So for row number 5, you're going to do the exact same thing, except you're going to swap the colors. So I just did a whole row of white, and I want to now make a row of tan. So I'm going to put the tan yarn around my hook and then chain with it, making sure that the white is nice and tight. And once that's attached, I'm going to start on row number 5 by doing the exact same thing. 2 extended double crochets within every opening, so the large gaps in between the 2 extended double crochets that you made in the previous row, that's where you're going to make 2 more extended double crochets within them for row number 5. So there's a gap here, so 2 extended double crochets, 1 and 2, then I'm going to reach over into that gap here and then make 2 more, and so on and so forth until I am done with row number 5. And once I've created my last set of extended double crochets within that gap, then I'm going to reach on over to the very first set that I made for the row and slip stitch into it, completing row number 5. So like I said, I did make some minor changes to this mandala pattern as opposed to my original mandala pattern. So I will have an additional blog post for this pattern. That way you could also have a written list of stitches that I used for each row, basically a written pattern. That way you know what I did for every single row and it's nice and written out for you, so it's easier to follow than this tutorial because I know I'm going pretty fast and you may have to like pause and rewind a bunch. So check out the link in the description box below to my blog and I'll have it written out for you so you can just be like, oh, for row number 4 she did this stitch, so I'm just gonna do that, and you know, so on and so forth. But anyway, so for row number 6, you're just going to make a bunch of single crochets. Just make 2 single crochets per gap, and then within the 2 extended double crochets, you're going to make 1 single crochet. So 1 single crochet here, and then 2 single crochets in this gap here, and so on and so forth. And that's it. Very easy row for row number 6, just a bunch of single crochets, and then once you reach the very end, you're going to slip stitch into that first single crochet that you made for the row, and that's it. So normally I would change colors because we're alternating colors here, but because this row was so thin of the white color, I decided to just do another row of white, just so that the white could stand out a little bit more. Otherwise, this row would have pretty much been drowned out by the tan. Okay, so for row number 7, we're staying with the same color, and it's going to be comprised of double crochets. So you're going to make 1 double crochet within every single stitch. So every single crochet that you come across, you're going to create 1 double crochet on top of it for row number 7. So once you've completed all your double crochets for the entire row number 7, you're going to slip stitch into that very first double crochet that you made for the row to complete row number 7. And it looks so much better now. Now you could totally see the white as opposed to just a little sliver of white. Now it stands out. And now I feel more comfortable using the next color. That way it could be more evenly proportioned. So I'm going to grab my next color and attach it like we have been so far, just putting it on your hook and then chaining. And then once that's attached, we're going to work on row number 8. And row number 8 is comprised of more extended double crochets, and this time it's going to be 1 extended double crochet per stitch with a chain 1 in between. So extended double crochet, chain 1, go into the next stitch with another extended double crochet, and then you're going to chain 1 and then another extended double crochet, and then chain 1, extended double crochet, and so on and so forth. So row number 8, extended double crochets with a chain 1 in between, and once you've created all your extended double crochets for row number 8, then you're going to slip stitch into the very first extended double crochet that you made for the row. And once you've completed row number 8, then we move on to row number 9. But first, I just want to adore how good it's looking so far. I think it looks so pretty. I'm loving these colors together. Okay, alright, moving on to row number 9. And for row number 9, I'm switching back to the white yarn. And this row is comprised of single crochets, but alternating single crochets. So within every gap you come across, you're going to make 2 single crochets and then 1 single crochet, and then 2 single crochets, and then 1 single crochet, and then 2 single crochets, 2, and then 1, so on and so forth. You're just going to alternate the number of single crochets that you're making per opening. And that is because my project is starting to ruffle a little bit, and when your project starts to ruffle, it's a sign that you're making too many stitches per row. And if you're on the opposite side of the spectrum and your project is starting to curve, that means that you're not making enough stitches per row, and you need to start making more in order for it to stay flat, because every row needs to get a little bit bigger and bigger since your project is getting a little bit bigger with every row. So that's why that happens. So again, mine was starting to ruffle, so I needed to make less stitches than I normally would, and I would normally make 2 single crochets per opening, but I decided to do an alternating thing, and that worked out. So yeah, row number 10 is going to be comprised of loops. So switch to tan yarn or whatever yarn color that you're using and chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're going to skip a stitch and slip stitch into the next stitch. Boom, you've created a loop. And then you're going to chain 4 from there, and then skip a stitch, and then slip stitch into the next one. You've created another loop. Woohoo! And then from there, you're going to chain 4, and then skip a stitch, and slip stitch into the next one. And you're just going to continue doing that for the entire row until you reach the very end. And once you reach the very end, you're going to do the exact same thing we've been doing, and you're simply going to slip stitch into the very first stitch of that row to complete row number 10. And once you've completed row number 10, then your project should look something like this. It should look super awesome. I think that these 2 colors just look fantastic together, and I'm really excited if you couldn't tell. But anyway, this is what the project should look like so far if you're doing the exact same stitches as I am. And now moving on to row number 11. So for row number 11, I'm going to switch back to white yarn, attaching it as we have been with chains. And then from there, I'm going to create 1 extended double crochet per loop with a chain 1 in between. So extended double crochet, then chain 1, then extended double crochet inside of the next loop, then chain 1, and then extended double crochet within the next loop, chain 1, extended double crochet, so on and so forth. And once you have completed this row of extended double crochets with a chain 1 in between, then you're going to finish it off by simply slip stitching into the very first stitch that you made for the row. So I'm going to slip stitch right here and complete row number 11. Woohoo! Okay, so now we're going to number 12. And for row number 12, it's just single crochets, and I'm making 3 single crochets per opening because they're pretty big openings, and I feel like if I were to make any less than 3 single crochets per opening, then my project will start to curve. So I did 3. So if you want to do what I'm doing, then for row number 12, make 3 single crochets per opening. That way the project could have a nice solid row to make row number 13 off of. And row number 13 is the very last one. Finally, we're at the end. So once you've completed row number 12, which is 3 single crochets per opening, then your project should look like this. Your project should look almost complete because you need just one more row, and it's very exciting. Finally, we've come to the conclusion. And yeah, so if you are unfamiliar with how to make scallops, well, first of all, for this row, I'm going to switch back to tan, as we normally did. And then I'm going to make my scallops. And again, if you're not familiar with how to make scallops, it's simply a bunch of extended double crochets inside of the exact same stitch. So I'm going to make 5 extended double crochets within the same stitch. So this is 2 and 3, eventually 4, and 5. I don't know why I'm going so slowly. But anyway, so 5 extended double crochets. And then I'm going to skip a stitch and then go into the next stitch with a slip stitch. And that's how you make a scallop. And then from here, I'm going to go into the next stitch and create another 5 extended double crochets. And then once I have completed all 5 extended double crochets within that exact same stitch, then I'm going to skip a stitch and then slip stitch into the next one. And now I have 2 scallops right next to each other, and it's really cute and awesome, and I'm going to do the exact same thing for the rest of the row. So in the next stitch, I'm going to create another 5 extended double crochets within the same stitch, and then I'm going to skip a stitch and then slip stitch into the next one, and then inside of the next stitch after that, I'm going to create another scallop, and so on and so forth until I reach the very end, and then I'm going to slip stitch into the very last stitch of the row, and I am completely done with the mandala design. Woohoo! Now everything else is really easy, so I'm just going to cut the yarn from the yarn ball, both colors, and then seal off the project as I normally would. And now I'm done with the cutest part of the purse. It's really exciting, and yes, there is a front and back, because on the back side, that's where you have all the colors that you switch to, and then this is the front where you can't see any of that backstage stuff, and it's all nice and pretty. And now we're going to set that aside and work on all the other pieces of this project. There is a lot more crocheting involved. It's just not as detailed as the mandala, because everything else that you're going to crochet is just single crochet. So we're going to have to make 3 more circle designs, but don't worry, they're not complicated like the one that we just did. They're just a bunch of single crochets. So you're going to make a slip knot, chain 4, and then go into the very first chain that you created, and then you're going to also go into the middle of the circle that you just created, and then single crochet 10, slip stitch into the very first single crochet that you made for the row. And then for row number 2, which is what I'm working on right now, it's going to be 2 single crochets per stitch. So again, just nothing but single crochets. So first row, 10 single crochets, second row, 20 single crochets, because it's 2 per stitch. So after you completed row number 2, then you're just going to make 1 single crochet per stitch, and then from then on you're going to pretty much play it by ear. If you see the project starting to curve, then start making 2 single crochets within the same stitch for the whole row. or you can alternate by making 2 single crochets per stitch, and then 1, and then 2, and then 1 kind of thing. If you see that your project is starting to ruffle, then make less stitches per row. So if you're making 2 single crochets per stitch, then go down to just making 1 single crochet per stitch. So again, if it ruffles, I would suggest that you unravel a couple of them and then change what you're doing. So if I was making too many because it was starting to ruffle, then I'm only going to single crochet 1 time per stitch. And if it's starting to curve a little bit like this, then I'm also going to unravel a few stitches and then start making more stitches per row. So I'm going to make 2 single crochets inside of every stitch. And yeah, sorry I didn't really keep track of how many stitches I made per row. I just went by how it looked like and how it felt. If it was starting to ruffle, if it was starting to curve, and whatnot, you could do it. As long as they're flat, they're good. And as long as they're the same size as the mandala, minus the scallops, then they're good. So for this purse, I needed something to hold it up. Otherwise, if you just make a crochet purse that's just nothing but just the crochet yarn, it's going to look really weird when you put stuff inside of it, because it will take the shape of whatever you put inside of it, and it's going to look really weird and lumpy. So I grabbed some cardboard and cut out 2 circles and a rectangle, and the 2 circles are going to serve as the front and back of the purse, and you're pretty much going to sandwich the cardboard cutouts between 2 pieces of crochet. So for the round ones, you're going to sandwich it between 2 round crochet pieces that you crocheted, and then for this rectangular one, you're just going to make its own piece. So from here, I am chaining a chain that is long enough to cover the length of this rectangular piece. Oh, and if you don't know what this rectangular piece is for, this is what's going to go in between the 2 circles. That way your purse could have some width to it. Otherwise, your purse will be very, very flat. So cut out a rectangular piece that will wrap around the 2 circle pieces and make it whatever width that you want. Mine is 3 inches wide, but if you want it smaller or wider, then it's up to you. So for the crochet portion of this, you're going to chain a chain that's long enough to cover the length of the project, and then you're going to single crochet all the way down that chain. And once you reach the end of the row, you're going to chain 1, flip the project over, and then create your second row of single crochet. And then once you reach the end of that row, you're going to also chain 1, flip it over, and just continue with that pattern until you have created a piece that is long enough to cover the entirety of the cardboard cutout, which means that you're going to have to be able to cover both the front and the back of the cardboard piece. I mean, it is optional. If you do want to just cover one side, then you can, but on the inside of your purse, you're going to see the cardboard, and it's not going to be very nice. So I would just suggest to make this rectangular piece double the width of your cardboard. That way you could just wrap it around your cardboard piece and it'll be easier to attach. So I am done with all of the crochet pieces for this project. Again, it's going to be a total of 4 round pieces, 3 solid white or solid whatever color you want, and then 1 mandala, and then you're going to make 1 rectangular piece. And now it's time to attach everything together and sandwich the cardboard in between the crochet. So all I'm doing is folding over the rectangular piece of crochet over the rectangular piece of cardboard, and then slip stitching my way across. That way the entire project is sealed with crochet. Woohoo! And then I'm going to do the exact same thing with the circle pieces, but the circle pieces is a little bit more complicated. You don't have to have the cardboard in between the whole time, as long as you're able to put it in at some point. So what I do is I just slip stitch along the edges of both projects, and then once it is sealed enough so that the cardboard doesn't fall out every single time I try to crochet, then I put it in there, and then I continue crocheting until the two pieces of circle crochet pieces are completely attached and sealed. And once they're nice and attached and sealed, then I'm done with the back portion of the purse, and now it's time to move on to the front portion, which is essentially the same thing. I'm going to attach the two pieces of crochet with the cardboard in between, but because of the mandala design, it's a little bit more complicated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this solid piece with the mandala right under the scallops right here, and it is a tiny bit more complicated, but it's not too bad once you already know what you're doing. So I'm going behind the scallop here and just attaching the yarn like this, and I'm using the tan yarn just so you could see what I'm doing, but in reality I use the white yarn for this project because obviously the tan yarn shows really bad against the white. So anyway, I'm just going to continue slip stitching like this. I go into the solid piece, and then I go through the mandala right underneath the scallop, and then I slip stitch through the solid, through the mandala like this, and then slip stitch until I go all around the circle piece and it's nice and attached. Again, I use the white yarn because it looks nicer. So now everything is nice and attached and all the cardboard is covered in crochet. And finally, we need to attach all of these pieces to one another. And again, this is the middle portion, so that's going to be right in the middle of these two circle pieces, and it's going to wrap around it like this. So that's what I meant by cutting out a piece of cardboard that's going to wrap around the circle pieces. So make sure that it has enough coverage for you to actually hold stuff inside of this bag. And again, I'm going to attach it the exact same way that I have been with the slip stitch. So I'm just going to line up the circle piece with the rectangular piece, make sure it's where I want it to be attached. I mean, it is a circle piece, so there's no real like start and end to it. So choose whatever stitch you want to start at for the circle piece, and then start from the edge of the rectangular piece, and then just attach it all around the circle piece with slip stitch until you're done, and then it should look something like this. Man, I wish I had more tan yarn because there's way too much white in this, and white is going to get really dirty really fast. My original plan was to make this tan and white and not white and tan, but I overestimated how much tan I had left over. I totally forgot that I made a one-piece swimsuit with my tan yarn, so I thought I had way more tan yarn, but I didn't. But at least the mandala looks cool. So anyway, once you've attached one side, then you're going to attach the mandala side the exact same way, except it's a little bit more tricky because again, you have to go underneath the scallops, and once you figure it out, you'll be fine. It's hard to explain and kind of show you, but once you're in the situation, like, you'll understand, I'm sure. So, woohoo! We're mostly done with the purse. I mean, we're pretty much done with the purse, and all we really need is a strap. And to create the strap, all I did was attach both the white and the tan yarn together to the side of the purse where I wanted the strap to begin. And then I chained a really long chain of about like 120. I wanted this to be a crossbody bag, so that's why I made so many chains, and the strap's kind of long. So I got both of the pieces of yarn and chained them together so it could have this cool design of both colors together. And then once I have completed my about 120 chains, I reached over to the other side and attached the strap to the other side of the purse with a slip stitch, and then I went back on the chain with a slip stitch also, just to make it a little bit thicker, because if your strap is too thin, it's going to start digging into your shoulder and starting to hurt. So although this is optional, I would recommend that you do it, and the strap is also more noticeable that way and much cooler, in my opinion, but totally up to you. So this is the finished product, and I think it looks awesome. I am totally loving this color combination, but I wish I had more tan yarn because I wanted all of this to be tan as opposed to white. I know it's going to get dirty right away and it's going to be lame. So I would suggest that if you have more of the whichever darker color that you're using, that you use the darker color for the back and the middle of the purse. Especially if you're using white, because it's going to get really dirty really easily. And also I think the color will be more interesting as opposed to just plain white. So yeah, that's just my thoughts, but you can do whatever you want, and I'm sure it's going to look fabulous either way. And yeah, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, but if you did find this to be a little bit too fast for you, then I would highly recommend that you check out my way more beginner-friendly version of the mandala pattern, which also comes with a written pattern, as well as the slightly more beginner-friendly crochet purse tutorial that I posted last week. So you can follow those and then maybe have a better idea of what I'm doing here, and maybe it's a little bit easier for you to follow once you watch those videos. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed regardless, and if you did, if you found this helpful, entertaining, or interesting, please give this video a thumbs up, and feel free to check out my other crochet tutorials. I have a ton of them. And also click that red subscribe button if you have not already, so I can see you next time. Bye!